Simple drums done well.
It's been a while, huh?
Hey, we're back, hey!
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Simple Drums Done Well, Episode 6. Today we're going to be talking about somebody that I would have to say is my favorite living drummer if I really had to choose, and who I've really just been coming back to ever since I first heard of him 8 years ago, and that is Mr. Mark Guiliana. Mark first came on my record when I heard the Donny McCaslin record Stadium Jazz, and specifically the title track Stadium Jazz. Mark just takes this blazing solo on that track. Mark is just super creative in the way that he improvises between small amounts of instruments and sets limitations for himself, and then is able to find a lot of creativity within those parameters. So I looked into Mark's solo project and found an EP of his called Beat Music and a record of his called The Form of Truth. I looked further into some YouTube rabbit holes and found this tune Spirit Animal that was Beat Music live at Rockwood Music Hall. Chris Morrissey was on bass. And to me, at that time, it was right before I moved to New York, it really kind of opened my eyes opened my mind into how the jazz scene was kind of evolving and progressing in New York at that time. And actually, I think was honestly one of the reasons that I decided to move to New York rather than somewhere like LA, because it felt like this electronic and jazz fusion was really happening here.
Bit of history.
So Mark is probably the only person I don't have to do any kind of research to give history on, because I've been such a big fan for so long. But just really quickly, Mark's backstory: he studied with Joe Bergamini in New Jersey, and that gave him a sense of the fundamentals while he was listening to music like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam. Really like listening to a lot of rock, but starting to practice the drums in that style as well. And started the drums at kind of a late age, around 16, but really just got passionate about it and started practicing a lot. So much so that he decided to go to William Patterson University for his undergrad, where he studied with John Riley, who was teaching there at the time. Of course, John Riley, a world-renowned jazz teacher, written some incredible books and taught some of the best drummers in the world today, specifically in the
Jazz idiom.
And John was, I think, an influence on Mark in quite a few ways, especially in terms of really starting to check out the
Jazz idiom
and becoming interested in improvisation with his drumming. During his time at William Patterson, Mark had a band called HEERNT, which had a slightly rotating cast of characters, but was maybe his first exploration into combining improvisation and jazz with these electronic styles of music. All of the music that HEERNT put out is awesome. In particular, there's a song Locked in a Basement, which has always been a challenge for drummers due to a lot of fast bass drum parts with 2 or 3 notes in a row. So at some point within his time at William Patterson University, Mark met Avishai Cohen, the Israeli bassist, who is really into combining elements of world music with jazz music, incorporating odd time signatures, and also kind of more dance-like grooves within improvisatory settings. And Mark, by the end of his time at William Patterson, by the end of his undergrad, was already going on tour with Avishai Cohen. The first record that I heard of Avishai Cohen that had Mark on it was Live at the Blue Note NYC, with Shai Meister on piano, Mark Guiliana on drums, and Avishai Cohen on bass. And I think I honestly heard that record before I even knew that Mark was the drummer on it. And I just remember really liking that style of music and that drumming, and then finally when I became a fan of Mark, kind of came back to it and put all of that together. Mark toured with Avishai for a number of years before starting to really focus on his own solo project. He's released quite a few records under the name
Beat music.
including his newest record called
Beat music, beat music, beat music.
which I got to see the album release of, which you can check out on YouTube actually from NPR. It was an amazing concert.
It's called beat music, beat music, beat music.
In 2014, Mark and jazz pianist Brad Meldau recorded a duo collaboration called Mehliana, and that's also one of my favorite records of all time. I think the record is amazing, and also the live videos from Nonsense Records are just incredible performances. And Mark also has an acoustic project called the Mark Guiliana Jazz Quartet that he's been putting out music under as well. In 2014, about a year after I moved to New York City, Mark did a series of clinics at Rockwood Music Hall that I attended. It was 3 clinics, and it was kind of over a wide range of topics that Mark later expanded upon into his book called Exploring Your Creativity on the Drum Set. I definitely recommend checking out this book if you haven't before. It features some really incredible tips on how to practice and how to kind of use limitation and exploration to get into improvisation and develop your vocabulary on the drum set. It also has some amazing clips of Mark just soloing and also playing with his longtime collaborators Tim LaFave and Jason Lindner. After the series of clinics, I was so intrigued with his whole teaching style and approach that I took a private lesson with Mark in 2014, which definitely inspired me in a big way to both continue working hard at this craft and also to listen to a lot of different styles of music and fuse them together in the way that Mark has really done in such an interesting way with not only his love of jazz music and drummers like Tony Williams and Elvin Jones, but similar to Jojo Mayer, his love of electronic music and taking ideas from artists like Ep.6 and Square Pusher and kind of putting those all together. There's kind of a classic quote that Timeout wrote about Mark from maybe 7 or 8 years ago that Mark uses on a lot of his press. And Timeout said, quote, "What happens when you add hard bop drum masters Elvin Jones and Art Blakey to a 1980s Roland 808 drum machine, divide the result by Jay Dilla, and then multiply by the power of Square Pusher? Answer, Mark Guiliana." And I think that really does encapsulate a lot of how Mark incorporates influences from multiple spheres into such a creative and effective manner of thinking about music and improvisation. Other projects that Mark has been involved in over the years, he played with his now wife Gretchen Parlato for many years, both in a live sense and also on some of her records, including Live in NYC, that episode 2 was about with Kendrick Scott. He played for quite some time with one of my favorite bands, Now vs. Now, with Jason Lindner and Panagiotis Andreou on bass. And that drum chair is now occupied by Justin Tyson. So Mark's profile was raised significantly when David Bowie approached Donnie McCaslin to have Donnie and his entire band play and be the band for David's last record, Black Star. And despite, to me, seeming like real giants of the modern jazz world, I'm sure Black Star and David Bowie being a little more mainstream led to tons of opportunities for that whole band that wouldn't have otherwise come about. Mark is doing a lot of online kind of classes and lessons during this whole quarantine time, so I'm sure you can find some more modern content coming from Mr. Guiliana as well. And let's get to the transcription. So for episode 6, we're going to actually transcribe and explore some of the vocabulary that Mark employs from a drum solo of his from the Bag Show. And specifically, this is from the YouTube video Bag Show 2019, Part 2. The reason I thought this would be a good place to kind of jump off on some of Mark's ideas, of course, I don't want to rip off his book or his concepts, but you can really see clearly in this video how Mark employs both limitation and restriction into finding creativity. So within the parameters of, say, a constant ride cymbal pattern of maybe just quarter notes like in this video, he's able to explore a lot of really interesting combinations between the snare drum and the bass drum and rhythmic phrases that maybe otherwise would be lost without the context of this really consistent ride cymbal pattern.
To the practice room.
So thanks for checking out episode 6 with Mark Guiliana. Check back later on for the full transcription from Bag Show Part 2 2019. And I'll probably include the transcription I did from Stadium Jazz in there with Donnie McCaslin just as a little bonus. Hope you all are hanging in there. Hope you're doing well. If you dug the content, give it a like, give it a subscribe. That really helps me out. And otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Happy practicing. See y'all. Really struggling here. Black Star? Black Star. Yeah, just gonna, yeah. Cool. Frozen.